Okie dokie. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the
Hello.
Community Office Hours with your Thunderbird community team and a key designer, Mr. Micah. Um, let's see. Micah, how do you pronounce your last name? Ilbery?
Ilbery, yeah.
Yeah, nice. Micah has been a designer who played a major role in the cards view, so we thought we would um, have him on to answer all kinds of questions about Cards View and to give a little bit of a window into the design process and how that's done. Um,
Yeah.
so Micah, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and how long have you been a
Yeah.
designer on the team?
So not quite 2 years yet have I been on the team. I started in April of last year. So wait, yeah, right? April of whatever year it was. I don't know. But yeah, I do a lot of design work around here, some front-end development. A lot of the mock-ups you see on the UX mailing lists and stuff nowadays are usually something I've made or had some hand in. Um, Before that, it was probably Alex who put them up. But yeah, I've been kind of uh, keeper of the Figma document basically. So um, yeah, it's I'm from middle of the U.S., kind of St. Louis area, but I'm in Illinois, so not quite. And yeah,
Okay, all
I don't
right.
know what else to say about me. I'm not that interesting.
You're pretty interesting. Monica, you
Want to want to ask Micah a question or say who
yeah.
I am?
Oh, yeah, both. Yes, I guess.
Well, I also just because we get to hang out with Micah on work channels, you have some pretty elite coffee skills, Mister. I'm having some tea at the moment, but you need to learn how to make the Thunderbird logo in latte art. That's your challenge.
Oh, that's a good
Oh,
idea.
that would be difficult.
Yeah, but still doable. Just,
I'm also more of a free pour latte artist. I feel like getting any kind of like logo kind of thing would be a pick style latte artist. But anyway, that's a different thing.
anyway, well, excellent. Well, it's really good to be here as part of the community team. So I'm Monica Ahens Madden. I just started October 1st. So I've been hitting just about 2 months here with Team Thunderbird, and it's been really awesome. It's especially, I mean, I getting to work with Jason and getting to work with Wayne, getting to work with designers like Micah, and also getting to work together with Heather. Again, it's good to be on this kind of call with you again, friend. So,
Yeah, cheers.
all right, Wayne.
I'm the community manager for almost 2 years now, but I've been around Thunderbird forever. And the question we have up next here is for Micah to tell us a bit about the development process of the cards view.
Yeah, so um, I have a little presentation that will kind of give you a more in-depth look at kind of what we do, but the general process is we look for a problem or we notice a problem. We think, how do we fix it? We go through lots and lots and lots and lots of discussion between the design team, and then we bring that to the community. We ask them for feedback. We take that feedback, and then we have lots and lots and lots and lots more discussion on the design team. And then finally, we code. And then we probably have to change something else when someone finds a bug. But that's the general process. We'll go in more in depth about it, like I said during the presentation, whenever you want me to start that, and then but
Yeah.
yeah,
I think this is
excellent.
a good time, actually.
okay, yeah, I will.
Show us what you're talking about.
Do you want me to share my screen with the?
Please.
Yeah,
Yes.
I will
And I'm
look
pretty
for
sure the
the
recording will
particular
pick it up.
window. Yeah, I'm gonna look for
Thunderbrew, I
whatever
like that.
window. All right. Sorry.
Computers. Oh no.
Yeah, I know. Mostly Zoom trying to find the particular Firefox window that I have. Because I have like 3 Firefox windows open.
Ah, thanks. Yeah, this is my hoodie that I got when I got hired. Love it. It's very cozy. I wear it probably too much.
Do you see a presentation?
All right, take it away, Micah.
Do we see a presentation? Okay.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, cool. Then yeah, so I wanted to go a little bit, like I said, behind the design of Thunderbird and just kind of one of our most recent projects has been Cards View for the vertical view, and that I was going to use this as an example of what it's like for us adding, well, just about any feature or design change to Thunderbird. And so like I said, we're going to use Cards View as an example so you can see some more specifics about that, but also this kind of just applies generally to anytime we want to change something major. And yeah, so there we go. So who am I? We've discussed a little bit, but without getting existential, I am Micah, and I'm a designer here at Thunderbird, and again, creator of most of the most recent mockups. And the icons, that's actually how I started here. The icons that were introduced in 102 were my first real project. So that's who I am, and yeah. So Cards View, for those who don't know, is a new view. You can use it in both the horizontal layout or horizontal view, but I think it shines in vertical view. And the way to access that, if you are on, I think it's all the way up in 115 now, is to go to your app menu, view, layouts, vertical view, which gets you can use table view or cards view in either vertical or wide view. So that's how you get to vertical view. But then to access cards view, it's this display options beside the quick filter bar, and it's cards view. And that'll get you kind of where we're at. And if you're on daily, you'll see kind of where we ended up. And there's still a few things we want to do and add, but the MVP is pretty well done. And but yeah, that's, if you're following along, that's how you get to Cards View, or if you want to check it out later. And then you'll end up with something that hopefully looks kind of like this. Not quite, again, but we're still finishing it up. But yeah. So the design process and the steps we take. So what we do, like I said before, we look for the problem. What are we trying to fix? What are we trying to solve? What is wrong with our current design, or what needs to be added, or what are we trying to accomplish here? And then we go through and we say, how do we think that we can fix that? What are the specific issues? What are that we can tackle through new design, that we can tackle through maybe making some decisions that are different than what we had done in the past, or whatever. What is the underlying issue that we're trying to solve? What's the big picture? What does it look like? And then we take that, we do mock-ups and wireframes and all that. We go through, we rough out our ideas on how we think we could fix it. And then we take that to the design team, we discuss, we deliberate, we do that all over again several times, 2, 5, 10 times, whatever, until we all come up with a consensus that we're ready to share it with the community and get their feedback. And so that we present what we think is a good solution, and then we get the community's ideas on if that's actually the case. You know, what did we miss? Did we miss something? Did we miss a use case that we weren't thinking of? What do we get from that? Then we take all that feedback, we try and find the common themes of that feedback. What are a lot of people saying about this? What are a lot of things that people are noticing that they're running into, the issues they're running into? And then we see, well, how do we adjust to fix those problems? What can we do differently to solve that? And then we do it all again. We make more mock-ups and wireframes and designs, and we bring it back to the design team and deliberate more. And when we feel like we're there, we start coding.
I have a question. I have two questions, actually. The first one is, how do you present it to the community and get feedback? Like, what's the platform?
Yeah. So with the front end stuff, a lot of that goes into the UI UX mailing list. So TB UX, I think is what's called on the on Topic Box. And yeah, we usually make a post with a mock-up or an InVision link and say, you know, this is what we're thinking, and we ask for your feedback, and we read through that. I think I've read every message that came through on the cards view as best of my ability, trying to keep up with it. And I make notes anytime I come across some interesting thing I didn't think of, or and then I'll either make a suggestion on the mock-up, or we'll bring that to the design team to see if anyone has any ideas how to fix that. But yeah, we start with the mailing lists. Sometimes it gets to, if we are pretty confident we're getting close, sometimes it'll go to like the blog. It'll go to, you know, some social medias maybe, and we'll take some more of that feedback that we get from those communities that are maybe not following so closely, but are also interested in where we're going.
That's great. That's like a real human touch to know that designers are like actually reading every single one. And then maybe a harder question that just kind of came up is, how do you know when it's done?
You don't. You don't know when it's done. So we never release a perfect product, but we try and release a good product. There is no such thing as a perfect product. So what we try and do is we get to where we think that we have solved most of the issues that we see. We also know, you know, what can we get out now that will be an improvement, and we can move from there, you know? So right now, you'll notice we don't have account pictures quite ready yet for Cards View. Those are something we are planning to add, but we wanted to be able to get something out for users to really start seeing the direction we're going, so that we can catch, you know, problems earlier. So, you know, we try and make the balance of getting something put out there with, you know, making as polished and perfect of a product as we can. Like, you always want to get something done rather than always have an unfinished project. But it's never truly done. We'll always be iterating. We'll always be coming up with solutions and adding new, and that's just part of software.
Yeah, fair. Thanks.
Yeah, so if I want to look more specifically into Cards View on these steps, it's what are we trying to fix? So with Cards View, what we were really trying to do was we wanted to kind of distill. Table view can be a lot for certain users. It's very compact, like in comparison to Cards View. It has a lot of, you know, horizontal information. It doesn't work well for when you put the screen, like when you have multiple windows open on the same monitor, or whatever, if you have a limited space. And a lot of the modern mail clients all use a vertical view. So you have your pane of the message on one side, and then you have your list of messages on the other. And we wanted to provide that for people. So we got thinking, you can't just, well, you can, but it's not the best experience to just throw table view into a vertical view. Like I said, most of that information comes across horizontally, so you're using more horizontal space than vertical space. So we were trying to come up with, what's the information that we can show? What's the most important information to show in a small amount of space? We don't want to get too wide with the cards. You want to be able to have a few messages shown in the mailing list, in the mail list, not just one. So we didn't want to we're not making the whole message pane again. We're trying to decide what is the important information, what's the important actions we need to know when we're looking at a message. And then we said, okay, what's the hierarchy of that information? What's the most important of that important information? Is it the subject? Is it the sender? Is it, the status? Is it that? And then we try to, with different font sizes and font weights and colors and icons, we try to arrange that information into a hierarchy that is easily digestible, and you can, at a quick glance, see all that important information that we're trying to get. And it is a little less customizable than table view, again, because we have a more limited amount of space, really. When you have the entirety of your monitor to go horizontal, you can kind of keep adding columns and shrink them to get your information across. When you have a card, you are kind of limited to that card's space. So we try to get the important stuff there. And then that's how we decided, that's how we're going to fix it, is by adding cards view. That's how we're going to get that more modern look. That we're going to get that important information across real quick. And then we went to mock-ups and ideas, and you can see this crazy mess of a Figma board is just a section of what we all went through. You can see a bunch of comments on the thing and just discussions that were being made. There are 100 different states a card can have. We're thinking through those. We're thinking through the colors, the contrast, what colors provide the information that you want to know. Are they contrasty enough? Now we need to look at dark mode. Same thing. What colors there provide the thing? Are those contrasty enough? And then we have the high contrast themes. We really need to make sure contrast is good there. And so we use the different colors. We try and make sure everything is at least a AA accessibility, meets a AA accessibility standards, which is the guidelines from an acronym that I don't remember off the top of my head that starts with W. And then we try and make sure that those are at least AA standards for everything, and AAA well, most of the time AAA, honestly. And then we go through, we talk about it, we discuss these. We found some of our original ideas just didn't work. We deliberated a lot on the selection states. We talked about, how do we signify selection with a few things. We always try to, that's another thing we try to do. We try to make sure there's more than one change of a state. So whenever we change something, we don't just want to change the color, because people who can't see color all that well or have certain color disabilities will likely miss that. We don't want to just change the font weight, because sometimes font weight is hard to tell the difference. If we change the state, we want to make sure we change at least two things at a time. So color, shape, font weight, whatever we can do. We want to make the silhouette of that message different than the message underneath it or that's not selected. So we were looking for a selection indicator that was more than just the color, which changing the whole message to blue, which is what we do in the table view and what we were doing in the start of cards view, is great in that it's a big enough contrast that it kind of works as a color and a shape, but it causes some issues when you get to some of the information. So to remain contrast with you with the text, we have to change the text color for that blue. So everything gets changed to a white text to contrast with the blue. And when you have two texts that are exactly the same color, it's harder to tell font weight. So then you're not seeing the font weight as well. When you have an unread message, that font, the subject is bold. And when you have, and also you're losing some of the contrast between the indicator colors because a new message has a yellow star, which is really easy to see in certain areas, but not in others. And then we have the unread dot, which is just, it's not a new message, it's just unread. That's green currently. We're actually exploring new colors for that now because we're seeing some issues with certain color blindness where it all looks yellow. So we're experimenting with other colors for that now, but like you can see, we have just a ton of different things to think about. We're always trying to keep every user in mind. We don't want to exclude, we definitely want to make sure everything is as accessible as possible. We have so many users, we have some colorblind users, we have some blind users. We try to make sure that our focus states are in the correct order. They read out what they need to read out. We're not throwing in a bunch of extraneous information at them as well. You know, we want to make sure that when the message is selected, we're not reading out the entire message until they've selected into the message list. We want to make sure we're just reading the subject and status, or, you know, those kind of things. So it's a lot to think about. Tab order, there's making sure that that the tab behaves as you would expect. We don't want to jump around the interface. It should, the blind user should be getting a very similar experience to a sighted user. We don't want to start from one part of the window, and then when you hit tab, jump to a totally unrelated or totally far away part of the window. We want to make sure the flow makes sense. So we think about that. We think about you know, not overwhelming users too. Like information can be overwhelming. It really can. Like if you always think you want the most information possible, but the more information you throw on a screen, it gets harder and harder to parse it, you know, to pick out the most important things, to pick out what can get you through the fastest. And so we're trying to think about efficiency as well. There's a lot of that thought process that goes on. And so we deliberate, we talk about all of it. And then when we think we've got a good idea, we take it to the community mailing list. So one of these, I think it's this one with the darker background, or the colored backgrounds here, is what I exported and sent to the Envision, or had on the Envision link and sent to the community. And from that, I read tons and tons and tons of mailing list emails. And I found there were some things we didn't think about. There were things that we didn't take into consideration. Like we had a new indicator for new messages, but not one for unread. We were only changing the subject to bold. And that's not enough. So some of the users were having a conversation on how to better indicate an unread message as well. And they said we should have an indicator on that as well, not just on the new. And they were right. And so it got to, well, when we started, the indicator for new was a dot, and it was just a yellow dot like it was on the folder pane. But then we realized that's not enough either now, because you can't have two dots with only the color difference. Now you don't know what's new and what's unread. So
I thought it
we
was,
looked at table
was it not
view.
was it
Go
a
ahead.
star? A yellow star?
It is on the table
Something
view.
that comes.
It is a table view
Yeah.
on this. It is a star on table view. We were looking at,
Yeah, that's
I was looking at
was
folder
my
pane at
question, whether
first.
you were looking for some sort of consistency in your icon language that you kind of dragged it into the new design.
Yes, we were. We that was the thing that another user pointed out in the UX mailing list was we could be using the same thing here. And again, that was right. That's another good feedback that we got. So it wasn't quite the same star that we had in the table view, because we looked at that and it was very hard to see a difference at the size that it was displayed. It still looked like a circle if it was fuzzy enough. And so I created a whole new star icon that had more distinct shapes. And I put that back into the table view. And so now table view has a more distinct icon and cards view has a distinct
Can
icon.
you show it?
Yeah.
Show it?
It is in the, I will share a screenshot. I believe it's here. And then I will. So we have over here, we have, I'm not sure if you can see the design document on my screen. I'm not sure what's being shown.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
cool. We have this little 4-point star on,
Uh-huh.
and it has a bigger one on when the message is there. We have, and then we have the green, like I said, we're exploring more colors, but right now it's green, little bubble for everything else.
Mhm.
We also saw that in our, I think our first mockups, it was really hard to tell what a threaded message was. So we came up with this idea for a line that juts out of the topmost message of the thread and has, it's kind of like an inset. You're expanding the original message and you're seeing all of that conversation there. And yeah, so we had this little line that is like a timeline of messages coming through, and the little dots that indicate where a message starts and stops, and then those change to unread and new indicators when there's unread and new in the thread. And yeah, so there's a lot to think about. There's a lot we try and think about, and then we inevitably miss something, and then the community helps us out, and then we go back to it. And then it is live now in code for the most part. If you are running daily, for sure, it might be in, I don't know if it got uplifted or not, but it is in
When you
daily
say
and beta,
uplifted,
I believe.
we should see it in beta. Beta 1.2.1 version 2. Here?
I think, I'm not entirely sure. That's a Wayne question. I don't know what's in beta right now.
1.2.1. Yeah. The one interesting thing where you think about state change between wide and classic view, maybe, like you said, the card view doesn't work that nice in classic view because it's a lot of waste of space. So could you conceive of remembering that the user wants maybe the row view or the table view when they switch to classic view, and then when they switch to column view, you switch back to the card view, something like that? Or is that too complicated to maintain? I see there's something like when you open multiple tabs, then they actually maintain their stage. So you can have one tab where you have cards view and another tab where you have the normal view. But I thought that might be a nice idea.
Yeah,
that's considered.
I'm not entirely sure what the technical limitations are there, but I know that we've thought about that as well. Like we are actually, for new users in the next, I don't know if it's in this release or next release, but we are like defaulting to a vertical with card view, and then but it's a good idea to change that at the same time
It
and then
might make
allow it
sense
to be
because when
overwritten. Yeah.
I
yeah,
can
when you switch back and forth, it's really very jarring. You know, oh, there's a lot of wasted space. You
Mhm.
know, so you inadvertently or always also then toggle that. You know, and then toggle back to the nicer card view when you're back in the vertical view.
I can give some insights on that if I can step in. Sorry, Micah, to
Absolutely.
step
Take it
in.
away.
Yeah. We did that originally and users hated it because we got so many bug reports and feedback of I want my cards view on white mode, or I want my table view on vertical mode because I have a large monitor and yada yada. So we will for next ESR implement a one-click switch to we need to find a proper wording, something like classic view or modern view or whatever, but we're gonna have a one-click switch to vertical cards and horizontal table. But the option
That'd be
to
perfect.
have those combinations independent from each other will always be available because users like to use it in different ways.
Yeah, it'd be a perfect little
Yeah, you
task
know,
for
we know it's
add-on.
a bit
But,
cumbersome right now to switch it
well,
like twice, and but yeah, it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
there's also the thing like we can never fully assume with certainty that the users will want to use the default that we decide. We try to always find the perfect default that has a good balance,
Yeah.
but still
There's no such thing.
yeah, there's no such thing as a perfect default for everybody. So having the flexibility is always important for us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another
And
thing we really
when you
try and
consider-
juggle is, go ahead.
Sorry, when you consider the card view, one thing you could do, I don't know if you considered it, but obviously the cards in wide view waste a lot of space, so you could make them flex, and you could have columns of cards.
No.
Were you considering that?
100% big no. Making that responsive would be like an absolute nightmare to manage the
Okay.
content properly. No,
Yeah,
no, no.
Okay.
we started trying to do, like, when we first had the cards view, we had them on a single row. We had the icons and stuff on a single row as well, and we were finding that it was really hard to maintain the content in a way that was you could see you could see enough of stuff, because if people shrunk their card view to a certain size, those icons would just cut off the subject and like most of the subject, and we would see things like, and we're also hoping to add when some of the back end stuff gets worked out a little bit, we're also hoping to add some message preview, and I think that could maybe be a little bit more responsive on how much space it has to display.
One thing I would really like just from my selfish perspective as an add-on developer, some event that's triggered when views get switched, so that the add-ons can be notified, because they might
Yeah,
have to
for
react
sure.
to it.
Yeah, it's part of we have a huge chunk of implementations for event and public APIs for add-ons once we reach the final stage of these cards view redesign completion. Once we reach a sort of like, this is kind of like in a stable thing, we're not putting a lot of changes and hands on top of this. We're gonna start like doing all these APIs and events for add-ons. We have like a huge effort for there.
Yep. We always try and include, we include the add-ons maintainer in our design meetings, so that we can always be mindful of how these things will work with add-ons. What would make sense to expose to add-on? What are the add-on developers wanting? So we have a lot of people looking for very specific things. We try and include people from the parts that are gonna see some use out of this. Like, so we try and keep an add-ons developer in there, someone who's really keen on the accessibility stuff. We're always trying to make sure that we have several points of view for new features and stuff. So, but yeah, we try and wait for the add-ons. We try and wait till it's in a more stable state, so that we're not changing things out from under add-on developers a bunch. We try and wait till we have a more solid understanding of what we're doing before we really write the APIs for it. But yeah, I think that leads to a great, like, kind of my last slide here is how do you all get involved? And we always welcome you to be a part of the discussion, and we're always looking for feedback on how to improve and move Thunderbird forward. So for design stuff specifically, like Cards View, you can join the UX and UI mailing list and submit your feedback there. You can test beta and daily and keep a pulse on the changes that are happening, and submit bugs when you find them. And then there are a number of other ways. We have a get involved page. It'll be linked in the notes I have on the slide here. So I'm gonna stop sharing and then open it to the next thing. Whether that be questions or.
Yeah, you get, definitely feel free to submit some questions into here. Real quick, Micah, you're not the only designer, right? How many designers are there?
No, I am not the only designer. That would be a bad idea. There is a design team of I'm gonna count them now. What's the front end? Alex, how big is the front end team?
We're 7 in the front end. The design team is you, Micah. Then we got Solange and also Elizabeth, which is from an accessibility and UX design point of view. I used to do design up until we hired Micah, and then I am much more comfortable with letting Micah do all the things. So I stepped away from that.
Monica, I think.
Yeah, I've got the next question. So, and I think that this might have to do a bit with the team size in the past, but why do these UI changes going to take so long to basically come into development and then to finally land?
So the reason they take so long is because we deliberate a lot. So we take, like I said, in the slide, when it takes a while for us in the design team to agree, and then it takes a while to kind of polish to where we need to be, and then we bring it to the community. We usually wait at least a few weeks in the community before we really start coding, just to get feedback and make sure that we're on the right path. And then it takes a while to code, because sometimes our design, sometimes the design is we aren't always thinking about who's going to code it.
That's not entirely correct.
I know, but like
if I can step in,
yeah, absolutely.
Thunderbird is a fantastically complicated piece of software. Whenever we change anything from an icon to a line of color to a string, there's a waterfall effect or a domino effect to 20,000 other things that we know are happening, but we still don't have the full resources to tackle. So anytime we change a color, then we do the design, we present it to the community, we get some feedback, we go back to the drawing board. When there's an overall agreement on that, then we do the patch and we implement it. After the patch is done, then we need to test it on Windows, Mac OS, Linux. Linux distributions are all different. We need to make sure that the changes that we're doing are supported by APIs that are available in the ESR. Sometimes there are some CSS rules that are not available until a specific Firefox ESR. If we want to change something that the piece of code was coded 20 years ago, 15 years ago, it's a house of cards. Everything falls apart. So in order to change one thing, we need to restructure 20 other architectural things to make it modular enough. So we need to change it. So we are constantly, things are improving, drastically improving, because we're going through massive rebuild of the source code, but it takes a lot of time. And especially there's the other aspect that we still release once a year. So users, the average user, will see these improvements once a year. And we need to be cautious because, yes, we're changing a lot of things. And we know the direction that we're going is correct. And we're seeing a lot of positive feedback. And also from the stats, we're gaining new users, which is everything that we wanted to, everything we were aiming for is onboarding new users. But still, we need to be cautious. We need to be careful. Too drastic changes all at once, all together, or once a week, drastic changes after drastic change is daunting and it's not easily digestible and acceptable for a larger community. That's why the initial implementation of Cards View was very limited, not the default, behind a preference. We needed to rebuild the entirety of the mail tab, but we try to emulate how it worked before and how it feels before, and now slowly we're adding more things. So it takes time because we also want it to take time. We just don't want to rush it through it.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot to be said for the baby steps that it takes to get through to a full-blown feature. We want to make sure that we're exactly like Alex said, not just overwhelming. Like I don't want to change. I don't want Thunderbird to look like an absolutely different application overnight. I want it to still be usable by people who are already using it. And again, there's some technical limitations sometimes. I ran into that with the threads, the card view threads. I had to have a specific CSS selector that wasn't available until one of the Firefox releases to make it work without introducing a ton of complexity. So, but yeah, that's. Thanks, Alex.
Okay. I think that I have the next set of questions, which is a bit of a mashup. And if my screen goes blank here, maybe somebody else maybe jump in. You've discussed accessibility. We've discussed the difference between the table view and the cards view. And so the question is, what does cards view offer that classic view does not? And also, how did cards view improve accessibility? Related to that is the question which we see in chat about, and you've partly discussed it, the green dot and the yellow for new mail. So kind of a multi-part question, but in general, what is the difference? What's the improvement in cards view, and how does accessibility tie in?
Yeah, so cards view does. So I'm not the accessibility expert, but I am going to try.
I can help you if you want.
Alex,
know.
Alex, you can hop in if you'd like. We always are talking about.
This should be like Micah's talk, but I'm just.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
You have you're the pulling the strings.
Yeah, the easy answer is different solution for different needs and different purposes. Of course, you can achieve everything in tables view. Of course, you can achieve the same exact things in cards view. So a lot of you will say, well, this is useless. It's just another thing repurposed in a different way, which is true. It's exactly what it is. Many users have very small screens, like a laptop. There's still a lot of laptops like 1280 by 700 pixels wide. And tables view is not efficient. As much information that you want to put on the screen, you have a very limited space. Cards view resolve that problem because it creates a more compact vertical thing that works better when you don't have a lot of screen real estate. The other solution that we're solving with cards view is 100% onboarding new users. For how hard it is to accept it, the word is on Gmail. And 90% of email users they think of an email interface as Gmail, and that's it. They've never used a table view. They've never used Outlook when it was Outlook. Now it's Office 365 or whatever they want to call it. And the default, the status quo of all the email clients out there is a cards view layout, which is a more pleasing user interface. And that's also our major objective, like onboarding users that are used to a completely different UI and make them feel familiar and not a jarring, completely different interface from what it is, unfortunately, the norm.
Yeah, and there's also the you want to we always have that balancing act of like trying to onboard new users but make it customizable enough so that our current users can get where they want to be. We always trying to retain all that customization to get so that our current users are comfortable where they can with their email client, and then but we are trying to bring new stuff to get new users. We want to bring Thunderbird into the next 20 plus years of being the best email client. So
Oh, I have the next question for you, Micah. You
Mhm.
had mentioned how you sifted through many emails on the topic box mailing list with feedback. So if someone were to submit feedback, what are some of the things that people should keep in mind to submit helpful feedback?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the thing to keep in mind when you're submitting feedback is, one, we're people trying to do the best we can as well. And I understand it can be frustrating when things change out from under you. And so just remember, we're not trying to just destroy your workflow or anything like that. We're trying to solve problems. And so if you're having a problem too, raise that problem. Say, well, this isn't working for me because this reason. And we'll say, okay, well, what did we do that broke that? What did we do that, or maybe it's not broke, maybe it's just a different way. And we'll try and make some adjustments or guiding to get back to where you needed to be, or introduce you to the new flow. And it's also something to keep in mind that when we're designing for things, we're also trying to design for which we've said is impossible, but we're trying to make the best experience by default for every user. So there are a lot of people who are email power users, and we want to make sure you can get to what you need to get to. But we also need to keep in mind that we're trying to onboard new users. We're trying to make it as accessible as possible. We have we can say when you run into an issue, explain what you were trying to do, what you wanted, what you expected to happen, what didn't happen. These help us to kind of say, not necessarily find the exact fix, but also think about what the greater problem is. What maybe, like for instance, something is not where you expect it to be, or we think, well, maybe the answer is not moving it to somewhere else. Maybe it's, why is it expected to be there? What is that feature? What is that thing? What's the general purpose of this thing? We're trying to think through, maybe some things are there for historical reasons, but they didn't make sense to begin with, or they're solving a problem that no longer exists, or they're solving a problem that we haven't thought of, or, so it's maybe not always if you have an idea, definitely submit the idea, but always try and think of what you were trying to do, what you expected to happen, what didn't happen, because these kind of things are usually a lot more helpful than just, I want this to be here, or I want this to be there, or definitely say those things, but also give your expectations of what happens, because sometimes the correct answer isn't always the exact thing. I want to move this to that, or it's not as simple as that. We need to be thinking about the expectations. We need to think about the flow. We need to think about things. So it's always good to know what's trying to be accomplished. What's the goal? And I guess the other thing is, discuss, like bring a open conversation. It's always great to hear different points of view. So if someone submits an issue or feedback, and you have a different point of view on that, start that conversation, and maybe we can be working to find the best of both worlds, so.
I guess I would just add that the nicer the tone, the more likely to
That's
have a
always true too.
productive conversation.
It's always true too.
Yeah, so we are ready to take some questions from those of you that have joined us. So if you have questions and want to speak up, please raise your hand so we can be efficient about it, or you can ask questions in the chat here, and we will address them. And if not, we did get a few questions that are not, oh, okay, great. Stephen, please go ahead.
Hello.
Hi.
I've been on the last few, so people know I'm not afraid to to chime in with what's on my mind. Still can't, just as commonly that, still can't get the Canada stuff working in Thunderbird. It's now an official bug. That there seems to be a rather unique problem I get. The Canada thing, 100% utilization for 20 minutes, and then you have to force it to close and then load it back up again. But it seems to be I must be the only person experiencing that particular one. But it's really annoying because I've never ever been able to use the calendar in Thunderbird for years because of this issue. But what I was going to say was I asked the question in the chat. I'm not sure it really got answered. I noticed on the screenshot that Micah
Yeah.
put up that the yellow and the green, the yellow star and a green dot, isn't it? Next to the profile image, what you want to call it, would be very hard to see if somebody chose a green or yellow profile kind of sort of scheme for their profile kind of. I mean, I know why they would do that, but I mean, because of how close those stars and the green is at 11 o'clock to the profile picture, there wouldn't be they wouldn't stick out as much if somebody did that. And like somebody put like Homer Simpson as their image, I suppose that'd be yellow, wouldn't it? And
yeah,
you wouldn't see that as well. I don't know if that's something that's come up, but there might be another way of sort of making the maybe a black line around the more of a black line around the green dot or the yellow star would make it stick out a bit more from the profile image, depending on what colors people used.
So we have we're planning to have a gap of like a cutout for those icons, so that there's a gap between the profile picture and the icon itself. We're still experimenting with how thick of a gap, I guess, to give it so that it's more distinguishable. But yeah, that is something we thought about. We've because you're right. If the user profile picture is the exact same color or a similar color as the icon, it can be very difficult to see. So we've been experimenting with a cutout around the icon that gives a gap of the background color. So hopefully we can come up with enough of a separation there that it will be more visible.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good. I was just checking that you noticed it, because it stuck out like a sore thumb when I saw your screenshot.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I did email this one, and I was thinking about, it goes back to what is it Alex was saying about how people are used to Gmail stuff, and I suppose I'm getting used to it too much now. And the more what I call inline message sort of features that you get in your apps and on Gmail stuff, where you can sort of delete and mark things as read on the message, is something that is becoming more and more noticeable to me now. I suppose because we've been so used to it everywhere else, that when I'm using Thunderbird now, I actually get annoyed that I have to right click, scroll down the menu, and select delete or mark as read or mark as unread sort of thing. It's starting to grind me now to the point where where I'm thinking that, why am I doing these 2 extra clicks when I'm used to, when in anything else I just do 1 click and it's done. So I don't know if you've got any of that kind of stuff planned in the near future.
Yes.
Yeah, we actually have a mailing list post from Elizabeth, who is working on the different menus for the cards view thing. We're trying to reorganize and compress those menus so that they're not, you're scrolling through a bunch of menu items to try and find what you're looking for, and trying to give actions that are taken a lot right at the very top as a button just to click. So Alec can go into a little more detail on that if he
Yeah,
wants
there's
to,
also, we know there's a third view that will happen in the future. Spoiler alert. We're going to have table view, cards view, and then I don't know how to call it, modern relaxed view, but it's what, like the Gmail view, right? It's just a line with your data, and then when you go and roll over, those quick actions, they appear on hover. Things that we cannot do in the cards view because there's not enough space. Table view is a strict table from an architectural coding point of view, doesn't offer that flexibility, and it will cover also the content and the data. So we're introducing in the future a third view that...
lo que estás.
Was that, sorry?
I'm not sure who that is, not me.
Yeah, no, I know. I know.
Yeah.
Caleb said something.
That's good.
It was a question, but it was in English.
Sorry. I even started looking in the add-ons to see if anybody had done anything like that, but there was absolutely nothing in there.
No,
anyway.
well, it's because it's very complicated. It's extremely hard. But yeah, no, that's in our plan that we're gonna do that. As soon as we finish cards view, that's the next step, to do this third view that it's more in line with what user expect, and it's a matter of like improving usability, right? It's efficiency that the old views and the other paradigms don't offer as much. So yeah.
Is there sort of a target date for cards view to be finished, so to speak?
Definitely before next ESR. Hopefully in January on the next beta, you will see, if not completed, but very close to completion.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. I'm done.
Thanks for your question.
I had a question. I had a question about modeless windows, but I don't know if the question should just be about card view.
I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a bit out of scope from this meeting, and I know you asked this
maybe
question
the
also
meeting,
in the add-ons chat.
I know. I wanted it on your radar, or Micah's, because
I know. We saw it.
I didn't want to double post it. I didn't want to double post it on the dev group, But I think it's an interesting one anyway. And it's very UX centric, but I think it would be best if I took it to the UX mailing list, maybe.
We could, yes. It's something. I mean, we are redoing all our models and dialogues in the next year. So yes, it's something that we will consider.
Okay. Good. We'll bring it there.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a follow-up, which is a question that was submitted to us ahead of time. When we were talking about the menus being in context and actions being in context with viewing the message, which is when are we going to be working on conversations view?
Soon TM.
Soon. So the front end of the conversation view is very easy. We could actually do it in a week. The problem is that the people that created the original database of Thunderbird 25 years ago didn't think about a conversation, because a conversation wasn't a thing 25 years ago. You just received an email, you replied, that's it, right? You don't have the long threads, multiple conversations, and you want to reply in line and things like that. So in order to achieve that, we need to literally rebuild our database from scratch. That's an effort that the backend team kicked off last year, and it's still ongoing, and we're landing things. A lot of code changes are landing that, of course, the end user doesn't see, because everything works as expected, other than sometimes we break a folder or we break something, unfortunately. But yeah, so conversation view is potentially loosely planned for next ESR if the database work comes to fruition and it's acceptable. Changing the database means a lot of very complicated and scary things that I'm not gonna get into it. But yeah, we'll have it sooner or later. We'll have it.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Because as the release person, I recognize that, as you say, there are scary things.
We broke some database stuff in the past and it wasn't fun. It was absolutely atrocious. So yeah.
Thank you. Other questions from the floor? If not, we're going to keep going a little bit, right, Heather?
Well, I mean, I think this is a good place to call it. It's been a really nice meeting. I want to say a huge thank you to Micah for his amazing presentation and
Thank you.
fountain of knowledge regarding.
Thank you for Alex
design
for helping me
process.
fill in the gaps.
Yes, thank you,
Because-
Alex, for helping. Thanks everybody for attending and you know, enjoying Thunderbird, giving us actionable feedback and being part of the community. So
Thank you, everybody. This
Yeah,
was
thank
great.
you.
yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. And what
Thanks,
Jason
Alex.
said in chat, thank you, Heather, for hosting and herding
yes,
all
thank
of
you.
us cats.
Bertha, Heather, and Wayne, and everyone.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks. All right. We'll share the recording and links and stuff out later. So thanks again. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.